Movie Nut here with a review for Wild Wild West, the 1999 steampunk action film starring Kevin Kline, Will Smith, Salma Hayek, and Kenneth Branagh. Based on the 60s TV show of the same name, and set after the end of the American Civil War, the film follows two government agents, Artemis Gordon and James West, who attempt to stop a southern madman, Dr. Alice Lovelace, from taking control of the United States, having kidnapped a bunch of scientists to design some kind of weapon. Along their way, they meet the daughter of one of the kidnapped scientists, and together they endeavor to outwit the mad doctor, and from there, action, mayhem, and comedy ensue. The acting all around is a mixed bag. Kevin Kline and Will Smith as the two agents have decent chemistry together, and they do well enough in their roles portraying the tough soldier and the eccentric, quirky scientist respectively, but there's really nothing all that impressive here, and it's obvious that they're trying to recapture the Men in Black Smith team-up. And it doesn't quite work as well here, but that's for reasons that we'll get into in a bit later. Salma Hayek as the daughter of one of the kidnapped scientists, though she is beautiful, she made little impact. Her performance was just going through the numbers. She didn't really emote that much, and she never really had anything interesting to say or do. And though she does have okay chemistry with Kline and Smith, most of the time she just seems to stare blank-eyed and really doesn't have much personality or give her performance much depth. However, the actor here that really seems to be having the most fun is Kenneth Branagh as Dr. Alice Lovelace, who, much like Rupert Everett in Inspector Gadget, he is just hamming it up big time. It's over the top, it's silly, it's goofy, and the film does pick up a bit whenever he's on screen. He arguably gets some of the better lines, and it's every mad scientist cliche and performance all rolled into one, and it makes for an enjoyable performance, if one that's just not terribly in-depth or mind-blowing. Of course, we couldn't go further into this review without talking about the key element in any summer blockbuster, which is the special effects and the action sequences. And despite being made in 1999, the special effects actually do hold up rather well, and this is testament to the hard work of the special effects team, especially on Alice's giant robot tarantula, which I thought looked pretty good. And you can even see the individual gears and wiring that make up this giant machine. And most of the action sequences, the film being directed by Men in Black director Barry Sonnenfeld, are professionally done, and while not necessarily as good as some of his previous work, still create the needed excitement, are shot well so that you can see everything, none of the close-up or shaky cam that we have seen in more recent blockbusters, with some tight editing. Not to mention the design work on this film is really good. It does look like the 1860s. A lot of the costumes, the waistcoats, the dresses, the hats, and even props such as the train that West and Artemis travel on, and of course the various gadgets that they use, such as bicycles with rockets attached to them, and the various guns, and all of Alice's vehicles such as tanks and trains. All of them look really good. They were built to a high standard. They look more or less period accurate, or because of the heightened reality of the film, they look as advanced as the time period would have allowed. And that steampunk aspect is arguably one of the film's biggest assets. It looks great, and in that regard the film doesn't fall short on any eye candy. And as for the score, it was provided by veteran Elmer Bernstein, who had worked on westerns before as well as a number of other films, and his experience does show, creating all the atmosphere and tension needed for an action film like this, while providing a heightened western score with plenty of big orchestrations and brass and some percussion in there to really create a lot of excitement, especially in the beginning during the title sequence. The theme there was just spot on and almost had a James Bond crossed with Indiana Jones type feel to it. Of course, the key thing to talk about here is the script, and frankly there's a very good reason why Wild Wild West gets often labeled as the poster boy of bad 90s blockbusters. The script here is, frankly, to put it in mild terms, atrocious. I'm sorry, but this is just terrible. It is so utterly terrible. I mean, with all the money that was thrown into visuals and action here, you'd think there'd be an okay script, but My god, the dialogue is awful. Everyone speaks in one-liners that have some kind of innuendo thrown in. There's a scene in the middle of the movie where we see James and Artemis trying out drag outfits, and they make comments about breasts, and it is a terribly written scene. I mean, Smith and Kline try to do something with it, but there's no escaping this horrific dialogue. And as for Loveless, though, again, Branagh is clearly having fun with the role. He spouts nothing but cliched one-liners that you pretty much heard in almost every single Saturday morning cartoon. There is nothing here in the dialogue that is remotely interesting, and when it's not one-liners, characters state what's painfully obvious. The plot in and of itself is passable. It's a simple enough stop the bad guy kind of story, and it does function, but it's the dialogue, as I said, that brings it down. Dialogue creates a huge part of a film, since it's through that we can believe the characters and we can get really engrossed in the story. Wild Wild West, no such luck here. The story, as thin as it is, isn't helped at all by the cartoonish dialogue, and in fact comes off as just that, a cartoon. This is like Wild Wild West, the animated series. For all the cool gadgetry and special effects they throw at you, which, as I said, have aged rather well for a film from the 90s, the story here is just so thin, and you just really don't get invested in any of these characters because they talk in one-liners. And it doesn't help that Salma Hayek is only there as an excuse for eye candy in corsets and frilly dresses. Her character adds nothing to the plot, save for maybe one or two contrivances, but apart from that, she's just there to be a pretty face. And the chemistry, though there is a bit between Kline and Smith, is crippled by the dialogue and the fact that the story just really doesn't give them that much to do. And by making Arliss so over the top, we also don't get that much of a threatening villain. He's a lot of fun to watch on screen, as I said, but he's just nothing that intimidating or special. Sonnenfeld did try hard here with the action to try and get us to forgive the plot, but the fact is, special effects can only hide a film's faults for so long. And what's more, they expect us to buy the fact that by the end of the movie, these two are friends, even though we only see pretty much one scene where they just talk about their pasts and try to get on, and every other time they're just exchanging more innuendos and one-liners. And I'm sorry, but that is not how you create likable characters. You create a progression of scenes and you show the characters gradually bonding with each other, but most of the time in the movie they're just fighting like little children, and it really is a shame. And so I must give Wild Wild West a bronze star, but a very low one. I would give it a plastic, but the visual aspect and all the production values, not to mention Bernstein's professional score, save it from being a complete disaster. But frankly, when there are so many far better summer blockbusters out there to get on DVD and Blu-ray, there is really no reason to see this one, except as a curiosity of the 90s. And frankly, this is the kind of film that I wouldn't be surprised if it was passed around in film schools with a big fat label on it saying how not to make a summer movie.